Hello everyone, welcome to Energy with Eluka, and this week we'll be talking about the electricity tariff in Nigeria. About 2 weeks ago, the Nigerian government decided to suspend the increase in tariff because of the impending strikes by the Nigerian Labour Congress unions. Those 2 weeks are about to run out, so the question is, what happens now? The 2-week grace period given was for the union to sit with the government and understand really what's the motivation for the tariff increase. What is justification, and is it justified or not? And now we're going to be waiting to see what the result of their conversations have been. The tariff increase, from what we were told by the government, by NERC, is that what we are seeing is a service reflective tariff. Now, what the service reflected tariff really means is that if you get, I think, about 18 or 20 hours straight of electricity in a day, that reflects very good service. And as such, your tariff should be cost reflective. However, what we've seen in the time that the tariff was increased, I mean, people have gotten their electricity bills for last month, is that although the tariff has almost been doubled from what it used to be, people haven't really seen any difference in the service that they're receiving. In my house, for example, my bill is almost double what I paid in the previous month. However, in this last month that just passed, my service in fact, it's actually almost worse than it used to be. Every day of the week, I get less than 10 hours of electricity, but I'm paying almost double. This is not what we're looking for. This is not what service should reflect. This is actually poor service. And as such, the increase is not justified. I mean, those of you that follow my videos and my articles in Business Day every week or every other week, you know that I'm not saying anything different. My message is consistent. And that message remains. Government has no business in the power sector. Government's only job or only responsibility in the power sector should simply be setting the regulation to say how the power sector runs. They should leave the sector entirely to private investors to run. This is the only way this sector would work. Anything short of that is a little medicine here and there that would never cure the disease. This is very clear to see. It should be clear to anyone to see. And my message is not going to change. However, I'm thinking that, and this is my opinion, what we really should see is not the government telling us how much we should pay for electricity. What we should really be seeing is traders, power traders saying, customer A, you're going to be paying, 60 naira per kilowatt hour for your electricity. And another power trader comes to the same customer A and says, you know what, no, I'm going to charge you 50 naira per kilowatt hour for the same electricity. So we really should have traders working within the distribution network, selling the power to the end user at whatever cost the trader can get the power from the disco and still make a profit. What we need to see is a cost-reflective tariff. And cost-reflective tariff really means that the price of fuel for the generation, the transport for the fuel, the generation charges, the transport for the electricity through transmission lines, over the transmission lines, and then, of course, the distribution costs should reflect all these costs wrapped into it. And this is what people should really be paying, what consumers should really be paying. So the conversation I had with my own disco a couple of days ago when I saw my bill was, you know what, maybe it's better for me to use my inverter, my diesel generator, and possibly install solar panels on my roof so that I'm completely off the national grid. If a disco says to a customer, you're going to pay double what you used to pay, the consumer will turn around and say, no problem, I will pay double. However, I also need to see an improvement in my service before I pay that double. So again, it comes back to the chicken and egg. So if that consumer is not willing to pay double because they're not seeing an improvement in the service, the consumer should have a choice of where to get the electricity from. This is what happens in a place like the United States. You know, in a particular area, you could have 2 or 3 different traders selling electricity, and whichever one provides the best value to a customer is the one they go with. I think that's where Nigeria should ultimately go to. And the only way we're going to get there is if the government steps back and allows private sector drive the entire power value chain, all the way from fuel generation and transport to power generation, transmission, and distribution. And if you look at what's happening in Nigeria today, in the telecoms industry, this is exactly what happens. In aviation, that's the same thing that's happening. The government doesn't have a national carrier. So you have different private carriers providing aviation services to the people, and people choose who they want to fly. The prices are somewhat different. The service quality is different. And people ultimately fly with who they feel safer with. They ultimately fly with who they believe is giving them the best value. The same thing should apply to the power value chain. People should be able to choose who sells power to them within a certain distribution network. And this is not hard to do. It's not rocket science. People know how to do this. There are Nigerians who know how to do this, who know how to get us there. But the government needs to have the courage, the political courage, and the political will to make this happen. Once they go down this path, you're going to see that things will change in the country. We have all kinds of problems in Nigeria today. Now there's a security problem. Now we have this NSARS that's going on. And if you look at it, it boils down to the same thing. The government controls a lot of things in the country today. And the government cannot do everything by itself. So there are some things that private sector needs to be allowed to take on so that government can focus on some of the infrastructural sectors that they need to focus on. You know, our roads are in a mess. Most of the roads in Nigeria are a mess. Security is in shambles. Education is a complete mess. Government should focus on the other parts of the country. Focus on getting the security right. And we're saying that the government needs to focus on these things now, because if they don't, chaos is going to happen. And we already see that happening. Our streets are no longer safe. And it's getting worse every day. So my opinion is, let the private sector run the power sector. And let the people get the service that they deserve. This is the only way, in my opinion, this is going to work. Now that young people are starting to demand better service from the government, we're seeing more and more that the government's hands are so full that they are unable to provide the good service that people deserve. So what are we waiting for? By the time the labor unions come back to the negotiating table with the government on this renewed tariff, on this revised tariff, what we may see is that they'll come to a compromise where the tariff will be raised. It may not be as high as the government wanted to raise it to. It might not be as low as the people, as all the consumers wanted to get to. But when that happens, are we going to see the level of service that people are expecting? I don't think we're going to see it yet. We're not going to see that level of service still for several years to come, because the infrastructure is still the same. The value chain really hasn't changed much. But over the years, it's going to take about 3, 4, 5 years for us to start seeing a market difference. Now, the government may say that they will still continue to subsidize the electricity tariff for certain people in the society, people that they believe can't afford it, can't afford the higher tariffs. That may be so, but we're definitely going to see a higher tariff put out by NERC. But again, in my opinion, I don't think it's NERC's job to put out these tariffs for the discos. The government owns or still owns 40% of the distribution networks across the country. I don't think they have any business owning even 1% of the discos. They should leave it entirely for the private sector to do. Now the question becomes, how are they going to finish the privatization? And in my opinion, they may ask other investors to come and take the remaining 40% from the discos, the 40% owned by the government, and they will now partner with the existing disco owners to run the networks. If they won't do that, it could be put to the existing private owners of the 60% in the discos to either bring up money to buy the remaining 40% from the government, and if they can't do that, then other parties could be invited to buy the remaining 40%. Now, what this does is that it puts the responsibility for making sure that proper service gets to the consumers. And if proper service doesn't get to the consumers will have an option, or should have an option, to go get their power somewhere else. This is not rocket science. People have done it in other countries, and we can also do it in this country only and only if we as a people find the courage to do what I'm proposing that we should do. And I'm happy to help. And I know there are many other people in this country that are happy to help, people that are qualified to help. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people that are proposing solutions that don't really understand the sector. They may mean well, but they don't really understand this sector. But there are other people, there are not too many of them, that really understand this sector. And they're happy to help. They're willing to help. They should be allowed to come in and help change things in this sector for the good of Nigerians and for the good of this country. Then and only then would we see a change to the power sector in the country. Then and only then can we become a truly industrialized nation. Anything short of this is wasting everybody else's time in the country. I encourage the government to have the political will, have the political courage to do the right thing so that they can better serve the people that elected them to serve them. I know that people may have questions or may have comments. Some people may even disagree with what I've said or my opinion. I encourage you to reach out to me on my social media channels. You can reach me on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.